I'm not where I want to be, but I'm in what was once a dream. So if I do some quick math, the future equals a dream come true. Since 1992, In All Honesty, a podcast by OLAVEORAWO.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the In All Honesty podcast. My fabulous name is OLAVEORAWO, and we are recording this episode at the Trio Media Studios, that is in Chandarana Building, Lavington, Nairobi, Kenya. I keep telling you, if you're a starter podcaster, the rates are good for your pocket, and it's a very cozy space that you will really, really like. And today in studio, I have a full house. I thought the friendship episode was a full house. Well, the life said, hold my beer. And today I have a full house here at the In All Honesty podcast. Today we'll be discussing loss and grief. Or did I start with an up? So I have to come back to the topic. So today we are discussing loss.
Come on now.
I'm discussing loss and grief, and I have a full house. I'll just go around and see. You can introduce yourself as you'd like to be known. Men first.
My name is.
Want to trigger everyone in the room.
Men have to go first. My name is Austine Arnold.
They always do, to be fair.
I'm an advocate. My name is Austine Arnold. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya.
Yes.
And also a self-published author of a book on grief called Candle in the Wind.
We are grateful for that book. Thank you. Agie.
My name is Agnes Opondo. I'm an A&R and an entertainment writer, and super excited to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Hi guys, Ingashian, content creator. My pages are The Career Whisperer, shameless plug. And I also help startups and other companies grow faster. That's what I do for a living.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Marylize Biubwa. I'm a human rights activist and defender, also a radical feminist, founder of the Queer Republic, the organization, and a human being going through life and grieving.
Thank you so much for coming, guys. It's usually such an honor to have people in studio to take their time and to come. So what usually happens is I put out a prompt on my socials, and usually I get responses from people. So that's what helps us as talking points. And I'm going to read some of the responses that we got, and it just becomes a conversation from there on. Live feedback. If you relate to it, if an opinion you have about it. So yeah, let's get to it. Loss and grief. So I asked people if they have experience with loss or grief and how did they go through it. So someone told me, sometimes something as small as a random man saying hi to me triggers the grief. Honestly, if someone has never experienced grief, they can't comprehend it. At least I didn't until it came knocking on the door. So that's one of the points I think I made in the prompt, where you don't know how to react. You don't know how you'll react to grief until it gets, to loss until it gets here. So is that something familiar? Did any of you think you'd react the way you reacted?
Maybe we can start with how we reacted.
How did you react? And what was the story? You can. Yeah.
I can go first. Is that
Sure.
So I think I lost my father 2 years ago, and that was the first time I went through grief with a very, very close person. My father and I were very, very close, and his death was also untimely. It was sudden. And one thing that I didn't expect, so I obviously, the weeping, the crying, the sadness, I think that's like when you hear grief, you expect to be sad and to cry and to weep.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the separation anxiety I had with my loved ones. And in the smallest things, like if you came to visit me when you were leaving, that was a trigger. Like if you were going back home, that was a trigger. And I would go into panic attack mode. I would like throw a tantrum, and I was living alone at the time. But I didn't expect that. That like the anxiety of anyone leaving, even for the smallest things, was something I.
And do you realize that's what it is at the moment when you're going through it?
No. So at the moment, I just think I'm being childish and petty and unreasonable. It took several instances of literally rolling on the floor and literally rolling on the floor in anguish of like, why do I feel it so deeply that you're going back home? You know, like you should be able, you have visited me many times and you've gone back home, but like, why is it so deep? So it took several instances to be like, oh, wait, and therapy to be like, wait, that's just the separation. It's the grief. It's part of the grief.
Okay. Should I read the next one or?
I think for me, in response to that, I think there's certain unique identifiers to grief sometimes that you do not know that, will come at the end. So that, for example, I also lost my dad in 2017, and he had a very hearty laugh. So sometimes when I'd hang out with my friends and somebody would have, would laugh in a certain way, then it would trigger that, sort of for me. Yeah. So just in response to that.
Yeah.
You haujui,
you don't
what
don't know where it comes from.
yes,
It's very
yes.
random.
So it's a very random feeling. Maybe even 5. Even now, there's a way if somebody laughs and I'm in the room, then I remember how.
Yeah,
Yes.
I used to laugh. The way she said, sometimes
very
it's triggered
random.
by just a random man saying
Yes.
hi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine actually is, my dad liked seeing us happy. So I lost my father like, is it 6 years ago? And he was always, my dad was a cartoon, he was a clown, always cheering people up. Some people tell me I took after him in a way. So I always wanted to see my siblings and my mom happy. So I was now trying to be a clown, entertain them the whole time. And sometimes I'd overdo it because I don't want to see them cry. And every time we would sit down and talk about our father and we start crying, I'd be like, guys, you're supposed to be laughing. Dad loved seeing us happy. I think I still do it to date, but it's reducing with time. But at that time, I was doing the most. Honestly, I was in every meme page trying to send it to my siblings and make them happy because I felt like now Dad is not there to cheer us up because he had really funny stories. He used to exaggerate things and you would die of laughter. So I think that's how my reaction was to it.
Also, do you feel like being the firstborn made that more intense for you? Like I had to step into.
Definitely. Being the eldest daughter, I felt, I have to just do something. And people are like, oh, every time, in fact, when I meet my dad's siblings, they'd be like, oh, you remind us of our brother. So I'm like, I'm literally my dad in a female form. So I need to,
So it sort of puts that pressure on.
It was a lot of pressure.
I think for me it's kind of weird because I can speak about grief from a point of death, and then I can speak about grief from losing people in life. And I think for me it's very important to have that aspect to it, because with regarding to grief from death, I was quite close. Being a last born in my family, I was quite close with both my maternal and my paternal grandmothers. And my maternal grandmother died when I was quite young. It was 1996. I remember it was holiday time. We were here in Nairobi, and then most of the family had gone to Shags. And then the day they're supposed to come back on 3rd of January, they came back, and I remember I had chicken pox. I don't know why kids get those things, but
It was truly 1996.
yeah, it was really 1996, and I had chicken pox. And I remember that morning, some of my uncles and their families came back, but randomly, because I was with my sister in the house, and then of course the rest of the family had traveled to Shags. So he just comes and then he stands at the door, and then he looks exhausted, which to me as a child, it was like, this guy has been traveling the whole day. Kumbe was coming to tell us my grandma had died. And I think that was also the first time I saw a dead body, because I remember the day we traveled to go bury my shosho. It's the day where people have these weird, interesting cultures of having the body sleep in the house the day before burial. So it was just there, and I have never, the comprehension of having lost my grandma is something that came later in life, but I don't think that image has ever left. And then with my maternal grandma, she died when I was in high school. No, when I was supposed to be in high school, but I wasn't. And that's a story for another day altogether. But I think for me, it's the memories of her. If I was to say someone taught me everything that I am, including being a feminist and a human rights activist and a person who believes in general, the next person has every right to enjoy their existence as a human being. It's her. And remember, we would be kids, and the cultural things that people normally do in the house. Food has been served and people are seated, but somehow adults get entitled to enda unilete maji, go bring me some drinking water and all that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that in retrospect, but in reality, it's eating time. If you feel like you're eating, you don't want to stand, why shouldn't the child not stand because they're eating as well? So my grandma would always tell the adults, if you don't bring your water before you start eating, you'll get water after you're done eating. And back then it was like, finally, because it felt like we were being bullied. But now that you're grown, you realize, absolutely, everyone deserves to sit calmly and patiently and just like have that peaceful moment in which you are eating your food and no one disturbs. And so when she died and I wasn't home, and for her, I couldn't even be able to attend her burial. Like I said, it's a whole story altogether. The complicatedness of it is until today, I have moments where I hear her calling me. Yeah, and it's weird, it's interesting, but it also, whenever she does, there's no time she's ever come to me and she's not smiling. So I don't know what that means, but I know with her, it sort of gives me some sort of comfort. And so whenever I see people that I feel like people are smiling and all that, sometimes it occurs to me as though it's her. I love seeing happiness in people, even in myself, because of her. But that is the aspect of death. And then the death that hit me, but I also didn't know what to do with those emotions, was my sister's death. She died in 2021. Now, the reason she died in the end of 2020, in December. The reason I say I don't know how to resonate with that, and the reason I was speaking about grief when people die and grief when people are alive, is because as a queer person, having come out, I lost my family when I came out. And I think that's, grief itself is lonely, because when my sister died, I did not know how to deal with the emotions. I remember I was told, and like she was saying, I broke down and I was rolling on the floor, and I couldn't understand what was going on, because then I was struggling with emotions of, this person has died. I found out through a person who knows me. And you see, when people die and you're sent messages, your friend has died, or your family member has died, or someone has died and we are fundraising for this and this. So this friend gets this message, and then she calls me, and I'm going about my business. The only core memory I have is the previous night. I remember my partner was around, and I'm a very restless human being for whatever reason. But that night I was overly restless, and she would sleep. She would get in and out of sleep, and she would ask me, "Are you okay? You seem restless." And I told her it was a very vivid recollection of possibly what was happening, but I didn't know. Because then after I learned from this friend that my sister died, I learned that night is when my sister died. And I told her, it feels like something is happening. I don't know how to place a finger on it, but it feels so close. It's like either my sibling or like just someone who is my biological family. But you also have to understand, by this time, it was already going to 3 years since I had spoken to my family. I never even came out to my siblings, but all my siblings consequently also disconnected with me and stopped talking to me because I'm a queer person and all that. And so it was such a complicated emotion to process. And until today, there are moments of sadness I feel when I see something that reminds me of her, because she's like my firstborn sister, and then I'm the lastborn. I don't want to say we had a bond. I don't want to say like every firstborn says they have a bond with their lastborn. Not necessarily, but like there's that thing of knowing this is a person who you've known your whole life, and then everything probably that you became as a girl is everything that she was, and all that kind of stuff. And so looking at it from that point, it's very complicated. But then there's the grief of hearing as though my mom is calling my name and my mom is not dead. And And then there's the grief of hearing my father or seeing someone doing something, or just conversations. Mostly it's when you're seated with people and they're talking about their families, and people are like, or just your friends. And I love that for my friends, especially my queer friends, because it's rare to find queer people with functional relationships with their parents, right? So like, it's a thing you love hearing, but it's also a very frustrating thing in general. You hear someone saying, hey, me, I have to call my mom, she has to tell me, or like, even, you know, during holidays where everyone and their ancestors is talking about their families, and you're there and you're like, you understand it, and it's a beautiful thing, but also it's not a reality for you. So I feel like I struggle. I have figured out ways to cope. I mean, truly so, as any human being would have to. But I feel like the reminders are always there. It's when someone talks about their older sister, then I have to move from the grief of losing my parents who are alive to the grief of losing a sibling in death. Or about people, a friend of mine lost her grandma last year, and it's almost as if I was grieving my grandparent, my maternal grandma, for the first time, because it was like, she's a friend, and then I got to meet her grandma, and then her grandma and I had like these beautiful relationships, my queerness notwithstanding, and she knew about it. And so it felt as though for the first time I'm having a real chance to grieve, and it was her grandma, but it felt so realistic to me. It's like, now it's the time I'm getting a chance to probably process what grief like losing my grandma looked like and all that. So for me, the reminders are there. The only struggle is always the oscillation between losing people in death versus losing people in life, and what that looks like.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you've brought up a point that I've had from people when they say, then they take the chance. You see, like the way your boyfriend has broken up with you, and then you get something happens, and you are now in the situation where you can cry. Everyone is crying. Like, I don't know any matanga. You get the chance now to cry.
Compound the grief. What is it?
You now have the chance to cry about that man, and no one will ask you.
Because people are crying anyway.
So is that also an experience? Did you feel like you got to a point where you finally you grieved? Because there are people to date, they tell me, I have a friend who says she hasn't grieved her mother to date.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you've gone through your experiences of like actual grieving, like accepting now this is
Yeah.
like the way you did with your grandmother's friend, your friend's grandmother.
Mother, yeah.
That's now you felt like, I'm now here accepting this, experiencing your emotions without the actual experience of the day of death, the actual funeral.
I think for me, what has become of that essentially is I've asked myself so many questions. I've even caught myself asking which grief is easy to deal with. So then when that happened, yes, it allowed me almost like grieve my grandma. But also I had to think of so many things. Like I was telling you, whenever I see this grandma's face, she's smiling. And I look at it, and how I choose to be comfortable with it is she's happy with me. Because there's a lot of conflicted emotions through grieving, losing my parents especially, that comes with, was I even good enough of a child? Yeah. Did I even, like, as a child, make my parents happy? And if I did, what was the scale of it? Was it that my queerness gave them all the sadness they could ever experience, that it couldn't matter how happy I made them? So it's just me processing all this grief that I have to go through, and then like even asking myself, and I feel like I'm at a place where nowadays I tell myself I'm more comfortable with the totality of death. I'm comfortable with knowing we are all heading there, we will all die. And when people die, the only thing I always say is, if it's people I love, I hope I reminded them that I loved them. I hope I lived. I hope I created memories. Whereas the grief of people who are still living, it's the fear, the constant fear that we have our time. We don't know when it will end. It might end in the next 2 minutes. But while it's here, there's nothing that is happening. There's nothing that we are doing. And I might not, and I guess that's the confusion with my sister when she died. Because it's like, there's these things we created, and then at some point, people made choices. Because I made a choice to tell them who I am. I didn't make a choice to leave them. They made a choice to leave me. And what does that look like? And I know you would know. It's why I'm very, very intentional with the people in my life. So essentially, almost projecting, but in somewhat a healthy way, ensuring that when people are in my life, I remind them I love them. And it's not just telling them I love them. I treat them. The way I treat them makes them realize, even without me verbalizing it, that I love them, because then I still have, at the back of my head, I still have to always struggle with, am I doing enough? And I think the most numbing thing is, am I doing enough? Am I good enough that in this life that I'm living, I can be chosen and I can choose people? Because the totality of death is that almost as if a regret, I wish I did better.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that actually ties into, we've had, I think even right now, that's what a lot of us are struggling with, when people are telling us, oh, you know, your parents are growing old, but there's a rift between you and your parents because of things they probably did. There's traumas. There's people you've literally just are not on the same book with, and then they die while you've cosanad. And then now there's just, okay, I wanted karma, but not like, this is, I don't know what to do with this. I shared memories with them. So, yeah, I don't know. That was just a random thought. Let me read the next one. Also with me, presence and a hug from people meant the world to me more than words. I didn't want anyone to say anything. I just wanted that hug and someone to listen to me talk about my memories with the person, I lost. My people didn't hug me, but I got a hug from a stranger. Man, I remember that man to this day.
Yeah, those mean a lot. My goodness.
Also, when you are a major decision maker in your family, it's crazier. You grieve later when everyone has started healing.
Yeah. And I think when you asked the previous question for, is it possible to sort of not grieve? It's almost, in the African culture, the way we bury. So somebody dies, and then there's chaos.
A bit of time.
Baby mamas, well, everything.
You're hosting hundreds of people every day. You're trying to figure out the budget for the funeral, and it's like 2 weeks of chaos. And remember, if you're an adult, you're working. And so in the time when you're being given 5 days by the government, which is ridiculous, to grieve, you're burying. And then you finish burying, then you go back to work. And it's very easy to sort of postpone the grief. And it's even like just by like chance. You need to eat, you need to work. And so you end up just postponing the grief. And then what happens is that later down the line because grief doesn't go away, it just simmers it's like a cloud. It just simmers and then it just bursts out. So I think it is more common than not to postpone the grief. Yeah. And I found that when I went back to work, so I took 3 weeks off of work. When I went back to work, I was, that one for like telling yourself you're a big girl. You have to.
Big girls don't cry.
Big girls don't cry. And in my first week back to work, I cried every single meeting. Every
your big girlness
meeting. Because when I came back, people are like, "We are so." If the meeting this will start with, we are so sorry for your loss.
Then that's the truth.
the times when empathy doesn't work.
And wept. And if I hadn't, so I ended up taking a career break after that because I physically couldn't work. And if I hadn't taken that career break, I likely would not have grieved. So that helped with the grief. And actually actively grieving. Otherwise,
when you say postponing, it's actually coming to you.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your book, your mom almost didn't react. And I'm worried about our like older people. It seems like they had to move on with life. She now, the minute this man dies, she registers, now I have to do funeral arrangements, I have to do this, I have to do that. And for her, she has to stay in a state of calm. She has children who also need sanity and need their parents even after this. Yeah, then you can go ahead with yours.
I want to talk about that, but also before, I think several years later, what I've come to learn is that we also need to cut people, some slack, because when grief happens, generally people don't know how to deal with it, especially people who've not gone through it. And so when you find people telling you, we're praying for you, be comforted, they don't make sense to somebody who's going through it.
And they also don't know how to console you.
But see, they don't know, they want to tell you something, but they genuinely...
Because the one for like, it's God's will.
Yes.
And you're strong, you'll be okay.
And God will provide for you guys.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, you have reminded me, the athlete that died or was killed, we don't know. There's a friend of mine who posted on Instagram something along the lines of, when you're an extraordinary person, the realms, the spiritual realms are not happy with you.
Stop it.
So he should have been more prayerful. And I told this person that is like absolute rudeness, first of all, but also, if this is the God you pray to, or this is the spirituality you subscribe to, it's nonsensical, because this person has died for whatever reason, but you think they were too extraordinary for the spiritual realm to actually let them live because of that extraordinariness. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's the same concept of people telling you, you're very strong, you'll be fine, you'll be okay. And I feel like, for me, the thing I've learned, and even as a person who, thanks to grief therapy, I've been able to reconcile so many things within the grieving process. It's coming from a point where you postpone a lot, right? But I think, just like you said, there's no right way or wrong way to do these things. There's also no manual for how to grieve. You say, I like to think of myself as a feeler, but I know I've had moments where I was numb. I don't know what I'm feeling. I just know it's hurting. And I can't even explain whether it's the heart that is hurting, whether it's the chest, whether it's the head. Everything feels tight. It's like my body has turned against me, and it's like grabbing me so tight and I can't breathe. And I wouldn't know what that is. But for the longest time with postponing all that, because I felt like when my maternal grandma died and I wasn't around, and there was so much chaos that were happening within like the family unit and all that kind of stuff, I felt like I should postpone that and all that. But through grieving, then I learned all emotions can happen all at once. I can, like she was explaining about being at work and just crying during meetings. And yes, she can be in the meetings crying and she can still deliver in work. And because people have not learned how lonely grief is, but also how difficult grief is, people think there's a linear way to grieve. People think, take time out and grieve. I could take 10 years after the death. And if I am, because the body has to be ready to do that. It's a thing that happens. It's almost a reflex. It can happen when a person dies. It can happen 10 years after the person died. The right way to do it is to always exist in an environment that knows when it's happening 10 years after, there's nothing wrong with it. It's when now your brain and your heart and your body and every inch of your being is now reconciling, oh shoot, this person actually died and they're gone. And it's always the little triggers, like the person who said, someone just says hi and that is it, right? And you will never know when it will occur. But we live in a society that pressures us to, you have to grieve, you have to cry. Okay, I can yell with you guys. I mean, I hear lawyers hire people to mourn and scream and do all that kind of stuff. That's a thing a person can do on command. But am I doing it because it's where my feelings are at, or they're not yet there? And even if I cry today, that doesn't mean 20 years from now, I will not have long episodes of me crying over that death again. Yeah.
I know that. I'm
But I
curious
like-
where you were going.
I like that talk about the environment, because also
Yeah.
it's also very important to put yourself in spaces where people don't diminish your grief.
Exactly.
Because you find a lot of times, and probably not from a point of malice, but people would want to say 3-4 months you're in a room with people and you say, you know, my father did this or my father like this, and they'll look at you as, why are you still going on about this? So you find if you're in spaces where then people diminish, because grief is forever. You 5-6 years, 20 years, 30 years,
Yeah.
you find that when you try to jettison or throw away bits of it, you start losing critical parts of yourself.
Exactly,
So it's sort of, it's like a friend, you say, welcome, let's get along, and then you sort of move. So you'll have good days, you'll have bad
Bad
days. 30
days,
years,
yes.
50 years later,
Yeah.
you still, you know, something triggers you, you remember, you put yourself in spaces where if you say something about your father 5, 6, 7 years,
Yeah.
somebody's
Nobody
not telling you why you
invalidates
still
that
somebody does not
yeah,
find it
exactly.
very weird.
Yeah.
That's also something I've come to learn.
Yeah.
Or, you know, 10
Very-
years later,
actually very
if you are, you
important.
know, having a bad day you're thinking
Yeah.
about, and then you say, tell your partner or your friend, then they don't feel that, you know, they should discount what you're feeling. Yeah, that's also something I've come to learn.
And sometimes you
Time.
discount it. So because of those experiences, you end up yourself
Yes, then
diminishing
Yes.
your
Your
grief.
the grief.
I agree.
Yeah, because you're like, it's not so bad.
Yes.
Like, at least I'm an adult. Oh, at least it was, you know, there's all, you end up internalizing that
Yes.
diminishing, and then you put it inside because you don't want to talk about it.
You know, you guys saying that reminds me. Last week, I was doing a work project, and this person I was interviewing, they lost something, right? And I remember telling this person, you handle yourself with so much grace. It's very difficult to know that this is their, like, adjusting to losing this thing you lost. And now looking back, and when I say that now, she got triggered, she started crying. And I was like, now, as you people are saying it, I feel like I put her in that space of, but you're so good at it, like, you know.
You're handling it too
Yeah,
well.
you're handling it so
So
well.
well.
And what maybe she needed at that time was a little bit more understanding, because, yeah, this is like a place where you're opening there, you're talking about something you lost that was so valuable to you. And then now there's this person who's like, Allah, kumbe unateseka. I didn't know. You know.
But let me ask you guys, do you feel having gone through grief influences how you treat somebody going through grief?
100%.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
You don't know until you know.
Because I feel like from the comment, the person just wanting a hug. For me, I've come to learn when somebody is going through grief, what I do is just be there for them.
Yeah.
Throughout. I
Just
tell
be
them, what do you
present.
need from
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Can
That
I come
question.
be with you at home? Can I, you know,
And
sort of
that's
thing.
the most
Do I
important
talk to your friends
question.
yes.
That question.
What do you need? And then I think the other thing I learned, comfortability with quietness.
Yeah.
People think you have to say something all the time.
You
And
cook,
like
eat,
most
yeah.
of the time, you don't have to say anything. You just have to be there. Sometimes, because grief has to do with loss. These people have lost someone. They need to feel the presence of things and people. So
and
just
agree.
be there.
Yeah.
Just be there. We were speaking with a friend of mine about how the most difficult part of grieving people who have died is when there is hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people in your compounds every day.
Oh my
But
gosh.
after burial, there is
all live.
They live on the burial day.
there's barely a person in your compound.
For 2 days
And-
post-burial, it's just you and your grief.
And you didn't feel the loss of this person immediately they died, but in this moment is when now it begins
hits you.
striking, and you realize how much you've lost. And that's why I'm saying, like, the constant presence of people around this person's life, the reminding, the telling these people, I'm here. Anything that you need, assure them, let them know that if they need you, they have a real place to actually ask something or go to, and all that kind of stuff.
And I really like the question,
Yeah.
how can I be there for you? Because
Yes.
when you read that example of the person who wanted a hug, when I was going through grief, most often than not, I wanted nobody. I'm a very social person. But when I was going through grief, more than anything, I wanted to be alone.
Yeah.
And I felt like the people coming to visit me meant that I was hosting.
Yes.
Meant that I had to like come out of my shell, and I didn't want to do that. And I think just asking the person, how can I be there for you? And giving them grace, because often when your friend loses or somebody close to you loses someone, you want to be there. You want to go there, which is the normal reaction to be there. But sometimes they don't want you to be there.
Yes.
And be understanding of, give them grace and just ask them. Like, I had a friend of mine, who used to tell me, I'm coming, but if I get to the gate, I'll call you. And if you still don't want to see me, I'll put the basket of food at the gate.
And then I'll leave.
And then I'll leave.
Profound.
And I have,
That is so beautiful.
That was so like personal. Like I was like, and many times I told her I don't want to see you, and she just left the basket of food and she left. And that friendship is now very, very, very close because of how much grace I was offered to just be, even when I didn't want to see anyone.
So going through things makes you understand. I'm sure prior to that, you probably wouldn't understand why is someone coming to see you and you're not seeing them, you're letting them live, turn at your gate. It's almost as if people, that's not African, like, doesn't matter. My feelings are not even African either.
What is
They're just here, I don't know where they're coming from. My feelings are not African either, because how am I African and they're African and we can't even agree? I'm crying here like a baby all the time.
What you mentioned about asking, do you want me to be there? What do you want? I remember when just Ivy lost their father and she came to do a video and she said, sometimes when you ask someone who's going through loss what they want, she doesn't remember knowing what she wanted. Yeah. So that's also something you have to figure out. You might be in a position where I don't know if I want to hug me, I don't know if I want to be alone. I'm just in a state of constant numbness. Yeah.
And I think even like more specifically, it was like, can I be there? Do you want me to be there? Or do you want a hug? And you may have assumptions of what they want, and then ask about those assumptions to validate them. Because it's an easier answer. Like, do you want a hug? And I'll be like, yes, please, or not really.
But I also think assuring them and affirming them, I feel like, why must people know all the time? Sometimes when they say, I don't even know, tell them it's okay not to know. It's okay. When you know something, just let me know. When you know what you need, let me know. For now, you stay there in not knowing. It's absolutely okay to not know. Because I feel like there's so much pressure to also know. I don't know. I've only lived this one life, and before now I had never lost a parent like this. So now how do you expect me to know what I need? I don't know what people normally need. And that's absolutely okay. Again, like I said, it's the presence, and the thing about presence is that it doesn't have to be physical. It's not only physical all the time. Sometimes presence is knowing. If I scroll through my phone, there's someone I know, I feel I can call them, and even if I don't need them to come, they can listen to me, even if I'm just calling to ramble. I don't know. Presence is also just knowing it feels lonely, and it is really lonely because I've lost these people, but I'm not alone. That's presence. Nikizunguka hivi nikitani hivi kuna watu nitaona, not like literally but figuratively, like these people you can turn to, and turning to doesn't mean when you turn you see them. Turn to means you're not alone in that sense. You're not carrying all this alone. You're uncertain, you're unsure, you don't even know what you want, but in case you wake up and there's an instinct or something that tells you, I want this person, that person is there.
But the takeaway here is, please, even if you're a staunch Christian, don't tell somebody it's God.
Where was that God when my
there's
father was dying? Where was he? Because most of the time you're really angry at God. Because I remember the day my dad died, I had just walked out of a work conference and my phone was silent because the moderator was like, keep your phone silent. I get out during my tea break, so many missed calls. Then I just return one call because I'm scrolling through. I want to see, has my mom called me? She hasn't. And now there's an aunt of mine who was like my dad's tightest sister. So I called her back because I felt like she was the one who would. I had that feeling because the last day I saw him, I didn't think he was going to make it. So I called her and I could tell she was crying, and she's like, please just come to Aga Khan because that's where my dad was. And I get there, of course I find my cousins there, my siblings were in school, both of them. So I get there, and on our way back, now of course we saw the body, and I remember looking at my dad's dead body. He had just died like a few hours ago. So I looked at him and I was like, this guy is sleeping. You guys, like me, always denial is usually my first reaction. Because I could even see like he's smiling, because there's this thing my dad used to do when we were kids. You'd go to, like the way you go and tell him, you tell mom, hatuna mkate. Then she's like, go and ask your dad. So we go to dad, and then he pretends to be asleep in the morning. Now he's like, anajifanya nikaa na morota. And they're like, Dad, tupatie pesa. So he used to do that a lot. So I'm just like, this is what he does every time. And then now on our way back, there's an aunt of mine who was like, now we are going back to our house, my parents' house. And she's like, let's pray. I dozed off during that prayer because I was like, ain't no way.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm praying to someone who watched my dad die.
Yeah.
And I think what made me so angry about my father's death was how painful it was. You know, this guy was sick for 2 weeks. And the first week he was okay. The second week, he was dying, HDU, ICU. I'm like, bruv, this guy's in so much pain. I'm like, my father was such a good man. He didn't deserve to die this painfully.
Yeah.
Okay, if we all have to die, his should have been the least painful.
Yeah.
So I was so angry at God. And when my other aunt is like, let's pray. We are Catholic, so we were praying the rosary. I remember dozing off. And then I'm just being, Aggie, wake up, Aggie, wake up. Like, that was such a nice nap. And everyone is looking at you like, really?
Yeah.
Sleeping? It's because I'm like, I do not have the time to pray to
You
this
get
God.
very angry at God.
I did
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It took me a
But
while.
I feel like that anger is very justified.
It's valid.
That's interesting. But for me, because for example, I remember when my dad died, I think 2 days later, we go to the mortuary to see the body at Aga Khan. And sort of my mother just says, my Tom, like to me, is this Tom? So is this my husband? And so I think 15-20 minutes later, I post on my Facebook, fuck God. And there's a
The
barrage
Christians.
of calls and comments on yes.
Now you have become an
The Christians didn't come for you.
You are cursing God.
And most of the people who are commenting, they know it's coming from a point of anger. So I'm not picking calls, I'm not replying to messages.
Yeah.
Like you see. And I sort of then just calm myself down a day later and delete it. But you get very angry at God because
You get
you
so
like
pissed.
I also had that experience of asking myself. I think my father was a very good man.
Yeah.
So he did not deserve to die in that much pain. Yes.
Oh, the shameless plug, Candle in the Wind. Literally, I've learned so much from that book. Candle in the Wind is written by Austine Arnold, and it's basically just him. Amma, you talk about the book. So
No, it's just my experience, for sort of a catharsis for me after losing my dad. So the 3-year period.
Yeah.
So I just detail immediately before he dies, then the dying process, then now. Yeah. But it's a very interesting book.
Pick it up.
Those who
So-
read it,
Is it the book
those
you
who read it say
reviewed?
they've enjoyed
I've
it.
reviewed it on my socials.
It's a nice book.
Yeah.
Give me a
You
copy after
should read
this.
it.
Please don't borrow. Buy Kenya.
Yeah, of course.
By Kenya, build
I'll read another response I got. I did lose a close friend last year. I felt it was very unfair that time doesn't stop for me to grieve. I went outside and people were going about their day, and I wanted time to stop for 1 second. A month after he died, I went to the liquor store on my way back. I just sat down on the stairs. I don't know for how long, crying about it. I didn't even take my drink till the next day or hours later. I'm not an emotional person, and I have lost people before, but this specific death took a toll on me. It's almost a year later, and I still miss him, and it's fine missing him.
I love everything that he said. He, she, whoever the person is.
Yeah.
That thing for the time doesn't stop for you.
Yeah.
You're like, why are you getting married? Like life this year. Like, can you wait? Like, you really want life because your life has stopped. Literally to a halt. Nothing else matters. Nothing else is.
You think about nothing else.
Food has no flavor.
Or even if it did, you don't know how to comprehend it anymore.
You are just like, that thing you used to enjoy
it's
is no longer enjoyable.
yeah.
It's almost like a black and white movie. Like when you're grieving, it's a still
When it's dark, it's dark.
And so you wonder, where are you getting light to just proceed with life? Like I struggle a lot with that question and still struggle with it. With like, why did life just continue after my life stopped?
In his book, actually, he mentions an instance where your friends come over and to them it's a road trip.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just a good
And
going
people
for
are
the
drinking
bar.
and listening to music and they come.
Are you
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
And your world has literally stopped.
Yeah. It's really quite something.
Me, I remember going back to work. I was lucky to have like almost more than a
You
month
had a good period.
to grieve my dad. And me, when my dad died, I didn't postpone it. From the minute it hit me, he's gone. Which
You
was like
started by sleeping
I just
during
started
prayer.
crying. I would cry.
And then when you woke up,
Niliamka kutoka maombi nikaanza kulia. And I cried myself to sleep
Yeah.
every night
Yeah,
since
same.
then. I cried myself. In fact, I remember I used to dream all the time that my dad was okay. So we dream like a dream where we've gone to Aga Khan, the doctors are telling us, oh, sorry, it was a mistake, he didn't die. That used to happen a lot.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
a dream I've gone to the hospital and he's seated out there and he used to call me mom. So it's like, hey mom, sasa. And he would always compliment my dress. My dad was a true woman. He would easy a girl toto mnaitwa zinawaigiza box. My dad did that for me since I was a child. You know,
so kuna
I am
baba
so
anaweza kukwambia kitu sahi.
I am so unfaithful.
Hi.
So this guy would sing songs for us. He would compose a song for you because you look smart.
Oh, I love that.
Sing and dance like literally.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
So now he died in November, so I took some time off. Then our HR was so nice. She was like, just take the time off. And our company used to close mid-December. So she told me there's no need to come. You just extend the leave, then we'll cut those days from the following year. God bless her. So she's called Salome, the best.
Salome, this is for you.
Shout
You're
out
a real
Salome.
one.
So I come back to work in January.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of things have changed.
Yep.
And these people are offering me a promotion. I'm like, I just lost my dad. I wanted him to be alive and witness
see that
this and clap for
promotion
me
and
because he'd
progress
sing for
and-
me, he'd dance around
Yes.
for me. And what are you telling me? What
be
do
so
you
happy
mean?
for you,
What
yes.
do you mean the company is moving on? I was so
Yeah.
angry. I'm like, maisha inaendelea tu. Me, I wanted the world to stop. Stop.
Yeah.
My number one true love died. Fucking stop. Just stop.
Yeah, for a
And
minute.
Then, yeah, so the world not stopping, I totally resonate with that.
Let me ask you, do you, as somebody who's not lost somebody very close,
Yeah.
if you imagine the closest person to you, do you imagine how you'd react if they passed on?
I'm actually interested in your answer,
you ever,
considering
like,
how
is it
aloof you
something
can
you've-
be as a human
Is this something
being.
you've ever thought about, dreamt about? Yes.
Considering how aloof Olive can be, like Olive can just be
That's what people think. And you said you're very social.
Yeah.
And at that time you wanted
Your own
Close
space.
yourself.
Yeah.
I'm very what is it called? I'm very avoidant, very independent.
Yeah.
I like being by myself all the time.
I have a very interesting analogy of you.
Yeah.
I think you're a very emotional human being.
But I am. I don't
You
hide
just aren't keen
You
to
mask
be
it.
hurt by people. You aren't keen to be hurt by people. You see the way we just go through life and we're out here either loving or going through life experiences and we're like, that happened, it was bad, but now move on. Olive just looks at people and they're like, me, the way I'm built, nikupatia to a real life chance and you look like you're just gonna character develop me for no reason at
And you're
all.
a brand.
Yoruba man.
You're a Luo called brand.
Yes, imagine.
Forget it. It's not
I
my
feel
portion.
like, being that you're a very logical person, which I am, I tend to see that perspective of you and I'm like, okay, you go about life, my dear, it's fine.
I think it's I tell people I don't have a gray, I have black and white. I can't register social cues like that or emotions. You have to tell me exactly what you want from me so I can be able to offer it. And I think for now, with your question, I think my worst fear is my parents because I don't know how to process that. Like I was reading your book and then the way you described your dad and Agie's dad actually, it's I don't know if it's now Luo fathers, it's such a reflection of who my dad is. The first time I saw my dad take a Panadol, I was this old. I was very old, and I was like, "Kwani men fall sick?" This man is the epitome of strength,
good health.
stress. Yeah. So when I was reading your book and I was thinking, he can't be reduced to this, I was just like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. And I find myself in moments where I hope I go before.
Me too. I hope
because Zulu says that parents are time bomb.
Yeah.
Because someday they'll die.
They will. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for your parents, it's the complete inverse, right? Like losing a child is, they say, the worst.
Same feeling, but now for them.
Yeah.
I really would not know. And I remember in primary school, the person, not the headmaster, that second person was that one. She was Mrs. Ogola. She was a very classy woman, always in heels. And then she had a very small frame. She was very graceful. Like she was so classy. I was like, why is she a teacher? She just looked like a queen. And now her dad died. And as we were thinking, you are old. I mean, but then she came back and she told us something that has never left me. She said, it doesn't matter how old you are. When your parent dies, you will roll on the floor. She told us, you should have seen me rolling on the ground. You didn't know it's Mrs. Ogola. And I think I just never thought about it until now that I'm looking back and I'm like, yeah, that would have been a sight.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's very true, because also when I lost my grandmother, and she was 95, sort of really old, frail, had been sick for a very long time. And I imagined my mother, who's maybe 58, 59, would deal with it any better. She still rolled on the floor.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the things for me that through my journey I don't say become comfortable with, but I've learned to accept. Which is why also I'm big on the here and the now. I'm an introverted extrovert, but my the way I lead in life is that moment I have with that person there is what matters the most, whichever person it is. However I will treat you there and then is what matters the most, because many possible things can happen, but amongst many possible things that could happen, death is one of them. And so, like, as a person who doesn't even, and I feel like grief also has, the way we were saying, don't tell people, there's a reason, God knows better and all that kind of stuff. As an unreligious person, but also as an unbelieving person, because I feel like there's always pressure. If you're not religious, then what do you believe in? And for me, if I was
so you're non-religious, non-believing.
Yes. If I was to say there's a system
that's another topic we should discuss.
Yeah, altogether. That if I was to have a belief system altogether, I feel like, and this is going through my moments of dealing with grief and all that, I feel like as human beings we do a very shady job of believing in us here and now. Like, we are here, but I want to know you better for me to see where I'll place you. I want to know her better to see what I'll think about her. I want to know what she does for me to consider whether she's an important person or not. I want to know whether, and I'm going to use a very, this is going to fall. I want to know who Olive is dating.
Yeah, we all know.
I want to know who Olive is dating for me to gauge how I will interact with Olive and all that kind of stuff. And we focus on all those things so much, we forget. Before all those things, who is Olive? A human being. Who are you? You're a human being. You're a human being. So if I was to have a belief system, how about human beings having an ounce of belief in who they are? And then in what other people are, because other people are also like you. They are human beings. In the very least, that's the only similarity we have as human beings. We are all human, but we do a shady job at that. So then we have to focus on these things. Like, even as we were talking, it's very easy for us to say, my father was a good man. He didn't deserve to die. But do you know all human beings are good people?
Yes.
In essence. Yes. Because even when a thief dies, have you ever attended a burial of a thief who was known the whole village? But when he dies, the eulogy is very dotted and decorated. You're like, dude,
Yeah, remember the good part.
snatched 2 phones twice from me.
You didn't see that meme though. There's someone was making fun of the size of someone's ass, and they're like, uko na haga dogo kama eulogy.
That is funny.
Brief kama eulogy.
Wow. Yeah.
But don't you think living like that then puts that pressure of the fear of loss? Like, for example, that say if you're with a partner, you constantly have that fear of, even if not death, that you'd lose them.
I don't have I kwanza ikikuja kwa relationships, I think also grieving in general has taught me that I feel like even as human beings, even grieving relationships, which is also okay, I feel like everything we go into life with, because of how much of a bad job we do with relating to other people, we think we live in a world that has taught us to possess and own. And what I've learned from grief is love is freeing. When you love people, you free them. And that's where probably the point where I arrived at being comfortable with the totality of death. Like, things die, people die. And dying can be literal, can also be figurative. Because the alternative of losing that relationship would be what? Staying and trying.
And it working out.
Or maybe not. We all literally will never know anything that will happen the next minute from now until it happens, right? And I'm a human being. I don't have any spiritual powers possibly to know I know how tomorrow will turn out, right? In fact, when we think about life, in retrospect, many things are about things that have already happened. It's dreams of things that either you've thought about, you've envisioned, but never really, the future would look like this. And that's why we are saying, don't tell me there's a reason, God knows, because you're literally forcing me into a situation where I'm 10 years later through grief, and now I'm saying, now I understand. Probably I will never understand, but I will never know that either. But I feel like there's so much to understand about people and to learn about people that if we paid attention to the here and now and what we do with our life here now, but also how we interact with people, then death will still be painful because there's no way to escape that pain. But what I've learned also, when you enrich your experiences with people, deaths, it's easy for you to grieve and still see the celebration part of it. It's easy for you to say, I knew Olive, and Olive was a nice person, a jovial person, and I had experiences with Olive, and this Olive is gone. Literally, no one could have controlled that. And I'm so sad that I'll never continue sharing those memories with Olive. But I'm happy that when I had the chance to share with Olive, I shared with Olive, and I lived in that moment. I like saying,
I do agree.
And she sees I post a lot. I normally say, no matter how hard my life is and difficult right now, even if I died today, I know I lived. Because I might be sad, I might be going through a lot of things, emotions, sickness, and all that kind of stuff. But I know I never once postponed the feelings, the emotions, how I treat people. I never said I love you tomorrow when I feel better, because I don't know if I'll feel better tomorrow. I know that now I'm feeling bad, and I can feel sad, and I can still assure people that I love them. Yeah,
I do agree to some extent. I agree. It's a two-edged sword where with relationships, the more you invest in the relationship, the deeper the relationship. And I agree that when someone does pass away, there are moments, like with my dad, there are moments where I felt peace, because I feel like we didn't have unfinished business. Like I had all the conversations I needed to have with him. I spent as much time as I could with him. My relationship with him was very rich, and I really, really cherish that. And I'm glad that was like that. The other edge, the other side of the sword is now me and him were really, really close. And so death is more painful.
Yeah, you miss that closeness,
so it's like,
and all that.
You have too much love with no one.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like a gap that it's now a huge hole in your life. Because it was a place you had put someone and watered it, and then it was a forest, and now the forest has been burnt down. It's a two-edged sword but I think it's better that way. When I think about would it have been easier for me to not have been so close to him? I agree that
The answer, it's better that you were close to him.
and that it like broke my life.
Yeah.
Like, it's better that it went that way.
Yeah, because would you really have it any other way? The answer is
No.
almost always
Yeah.
no. Which is why I was saying even with the relationships, it's where you can stay longer, and whatever it is that would have made the relationship break continues happening. Then if it's hurt, then there's the part, the problem about any kind of relationship we have in life, which also reflects with the dad, perfect relationship, and so she misses that. But now with my father or my parents, worst relationship, I don't miss that, but I still have to grieve every day. And it's a constant reminder of, you wake up, you dare look at yourself in the mirror, what you see is this person who, no matter how confident I am in myself, no matter how much I love myself, no matter how much I believe in myself as a person, no matter how much of a good person I think of myself to be, I'm still this person who maybe wasn't deserving enough of the parental love to that extent anyway, right? And those are the realities. So in moments where something like death happens, it's not like pain won't be there for me. It's going to 6 years now. Pain will be there. In fact, a lot of pain, because unlike her, there'll be a lot of unfinished business, right? So I will go through that pain, but I also know the reality is I can't say may my parents stay alive for as long as until we talk about things, because even the efforts that I put now or I try to pursue now to talk have not worked. And it's okay. And sometimes it's okay to make decisions, bad or good. Like the totality of it is, it's okay.
But say if something were to happen, or say there is something happened to your sister, did you get that feeling of you lost time?
I did. And then that's why I was saying,
you could have worked,
that's why I was saying it was very conflicting, because I did feel that way. And it took a lot of people who stood, because that's not even something, I've never even talked about it on social media, not even once. I didn't know. I felt like I was an imposter. I felt like all the feelings I was feeling were wrong. Yeah, because I was like, this is my sister. I never even came out to her. After she found out that my mom had thrown me out, she never once reached out. She never once asked, are you okay?
Yeah.
This is me, a person who still has to deal with the pain of being homeless in the streets of Nairobi, where I have family all across Nairobi, right? So I'm having these conflicted feelings where I'm like, you even feel like, was I right to choose myself that way? But in that moment, I wasn't even choosing myself. I was going through the shit part of life, right? And none of them showed up. And so my sister has died, and I'm feeling the pain was, I was numb. I was feeling it. I was numb. I didn't know how to process what was going on. And then there's the feelings of feeling like, do I even have a right to feel this way? They say when people die, they see the world, right? If she's seeing me now, is she even acknowledging the feelings that I'm having? Because I'm feeling so sad. I'm in pain. I'm feeling like I lost a sister, and I feel like, because by the time she was dying, it was going to 3 years. Like, maybe not much would have happened even if we were still together and intact. But does she feel like she lost anything with me? Because I feel like I lost something, but I also feel like I'm not entitled to that feeling. So it's confusing. It's a lot of things. Regret will come. Even in the best case scenarios, there's still a regret of, I wish dad still stayed so that we can continue having all those good memories, right? So regrets will come still. And there are moments, I'm sure if she can speak about it, there are moments even when she knows she had a very rich relationship with the father, there's still moments of doubts that come. Did I love my dad enough? Did I show up for my dad enough? Did I do enough that when dad went, dad knew I loved him regardless, right? You still ask yourself. So you will never be sure. There is no script that will say, I am sure I did the best that I can.
So there's the worry the other way around.
Yes.
Not only that. What's my last memory of this?
It's not it. Memory of me.
And with the way she said, I don't know whether you guys have experienced this, but what more often than not, when you're making a major decision, or like when you're going through a major transition, like with the work thing, you often ask yourself, like it's subconscious, but you often find yourself in a moment where you're like, what would he think?
Yeah.
You know, what would they, is this something that they would approve of? And you know, you can't really know for sure.
Yes.
You can create hypotheses, and, but there's always that, like, what would they think?
Yeah.
That you'll always question, even when you had a good relationship, even when, constantly leading your life in a way.
Me, you know, my sisters, all of them graduated after Dad died. I'm the only person who graduated when Dad was alive. My father was a teacher, so being a teacher's kid, especially a Luo teacher's kid, the pressure to do well in school,
pressure gets worse.
So every time,
You guys are bonding on me.
We're the ones who are here like whatever.
You guys have a lot in common.
Yes. No, we both parents,
My
teachers.
grandma was a
it was
teacher,
me,
but
it was
my
not
parents
my
no.
So my mom, on the other hand, was a civil servant. My mom is vibes and inshallah kind of person. Her, she was like, the grade you get is the grade you get, good for you. But my dad was, no, you have to get that A, especially on me. I feel like my siblings had it easier.
Are you the first one?
Yes. So each time all my siblings graduated, like last year, my sister who follows me, there's a course she took on teaching to just make her portfolio better. And I remember just saying, I wish Dad was here every time, because I'm like, I know he'd be dancing around, he'd be singing
He'd be the proudest
songs.
man
And sometimes
alive.
we'd even get embarrassed of his songs, but now I look back and I'm like, how I wish I wish he'd just be here to sing for me those two silly, and they were very silly, very stupid lyrics, and he was so happy annoying you with his songs. So every time even I've achieved something, I'm like, if Dad was here, you feel happy, and then you're like, Dad isn't here. That really sucks.
I have a question for you guys. When you're going through grief, and I am the youngest in grief, it seems. I find that sometimes I can't separate pain that is grief and pain that is an experience. So if I go outside and then the shopkeeper talks to me badly, there's sometimes I feel it so deeply, and I can't tell whether it's a grief trigger.
Is it because my dad is not here? Why are you not being so nice?
Why you being so mean? Is it because I don't have a father?
Is it because my father? No, it's actually a thing. It's actually really a thing. It's actually a thing. It's a real thing. We were actually laughing with my friend because she is a biological parent orphan, and then her grandma is the one who brought her up as her parent, her guardian. And so it was a running joke, and you see it's during the moment where everything is happening, so it was a running joke to laugh about and all. But she kept on saying, hey, you're raising your voice and I'm an orphan. I don't think you should be raising your voice to an orphan. And it's when you look at it in that moment, it sounds like it's funny, but literally and that's what many, I think you even tried to highlight it earlier where you were saying it's like everyone acts like they know what is going on, and literally no one knows what is going on, and then for you everything now is tied to that grief.
It's just your lesson.
Wamemaliza switi kwa meza. Okay, is it because my dad is not here?
Babangu angejua.
Yes,
because like if my dad was alive.
Ati wasichana wa Nairobi mnavunja watu roho, amjali hata kama ni orphan.
Exactly. Like it's you relate everything, whether it's a sad thing, whether it's a random thing, and that shows you how grief is just always there with us. Sometimes it catches us in moments we can make jokes about it. The memes part where you were busy looking for memes because
I
the more you
made that joke. You know, during my speech for my dad's funeral, I was so hell bent on having people be happy. In my head, I'm like, we have to celebrate this man. Yes, it hurts, but I even made a joke in my speech. Do you know no one laughed? And I was just there like, Aggie, you probably need therapy.
But I think it's very true. The early stages of grief. I think subconsciously you imagine everything is tied to it. Anything that happens, especially something major, an uncle has done something, or a friend, you feel, hey.
But trust me, it's not. They probably don't even know you lost.
They don't
it's
even.
Just your view of
Sometimes even at work, I'm like, my dad did not die for you to be treating me like this. You know,
Also, in reality, that's the moment where if you're having complicated feelings, your dad would be there to hug you.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a solution, but his hug was the comfort you needed.
Or
So
just
maybe
be alive.
so
Just
that
the fact
yes,
that
so in that moment, it's actually you saying there's someone I knew pretty much all my life who made all these burdens of life much easier to carry. And now that person is not here. And now I have to think of why have I missed the sweet? But why is someone disturbing me at work also?
Yeah.
But why did the Kibanda man speak to me badly today? Like of all days.
It's because the way people were shamed in high school.
Yeah.
You know, when people are like, if something happened and someone was triggered by something,
Yeah,
they
people
cry about-
shamed
and
you
they're just
about
from
South Alia.
burying the air.
Yeah.
Wendo wa kwanza.
And
It was just
or even
now
in
looking back
Mchongwano,
on
hata no wonder
TV.
mamako alikufa.
And
No wonder.
Kenyans project that thing all the time on
lot.
social
And it's
media.
really bad.
Watch TikTok when Kenyans are coming for someone from a different country who is talking about Kenya. Okay, now say it but without crying.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you telling this? Okay, I get it, but like, why? Kenyans really like to make people Kenyans like, and you see, it's general. We like making people feel like say it without crying. But maybe the best way I can say, maybe the tears are what are saying the best what I'm feeling. It sasa iseme lakini bila kulia.
Let me tell you guys a funny story. Well, maybe it's not so funny, but when are we pausing? When we were planning our wedding, we had 2 venue choices, and I had a top 1 choice and a second choice.
Yes.
Both venues, I chose them. I said, these are my 2 venues. This is my number 1. If this is not available, we'll go with number 2. And my husband's family chose venue 2.
True.
And to tell you, it was like it in my heart. I was like, is it because my father is not here to defend me? You, because you have your father, can fight for you. Me, where's my father? I felt it so deeply. I can't even explain.
I can imagine.
I was just like,
can
I
imagine.
don't even want to get married.
Yes.
I am. Panyeni wedding mnite. Plan it, call me.
I can imagine.
It is so bad.
And I was like, later I was like, I am the one who chose.
What?
Both
Yes.
venues were my choice.
So it
Why
was
am I
an
so
either
bad?
or,
Yeah, why am I throwing a tantrum?
But then there's something, I think it's Austine who said that, yes, you said, even if it's someone you're not talking to, you want them to know when you need to talk to them, they'll be there.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, I move with life every day scared. If anyone I ever know dies, I don't know how I'll handle it.
Yeah.
Because I'm very horrible with communication. I don't reach out to people.
Yeah.
I am just over there existing alone. But there's usually the comfort of, if I call, they'll be there.
pick.
And it was just the other day I was I clear my cache every day and like texts and whatever. And so
Why?
at the bottom, just Luoman activities.
Okay.
That's a very nice answer.
Mulifanyia nini ole?
Utatumaliza.
So I clear out my things, and I lost a friend last year. And for this period, this 1 year, her text has always, I've never deleted her thread. And it was just, it's weird for me because if I didn't talk to you every day, but when I texted,
You responded.
yeah, you were there to receive. You didn't even need to respond. I knew you'd read it. So I think for me then moving about life, just thinking, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough for everyone around me. And sometimes it's overwhelming because I don't know how to do it.
What more you can do? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what more I can do. Am I a bad person because I'm avoidant? So that is also something that's,
I think
actively-
my experience with that is, imagine you don't know until you know. It's one of those things for grief will change you. And grief is a necessary thing for human evolution. Like, I think when you go through grief, the way you interact with the world shifts. shifts. And that shift cannot happen until you go. It's like something that, because you haven't experienced it, you shouldn't live life with this pressure of, oh my gosh, in case it happens, then I will have not done this or done that. Life experiences will organically adjust the way you are.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Sometimes just giving ourselves grace to be like, because I'm not a mother, I can never understand and I can never be present for my friends who are mothers.
Yeah.
But when I do become a mother, it will adjust how I show up. It'll adjust. And so I can't now start putting my brain in the head of what mothers are like. Yeah. So when and if that happens, it'll organically adjust who I am. It'll adjust how I show up for other new moms, etc. And that's how I just think about grief. And just like living life in a way that is authentic to you.
Yes.
And the life experiences will automatically change.
I also
But
think
you said
like
something very interesting also. Is it sort of the way somebody who's never gone to therapy would tell you, why would you sit down with somebody
Exactly.
and then pay for it until you
Go
go
through
to therapy and then it changes
It just completely.
Yeah.
There is something
Yeah.
about it. So
And you can't fake it. You can't curate it. You can't be like, now let me put my head in the space of someone who has gone through therapy. You just have to go through it.
yeah,
It's
but
up to
me
you.
I also think life is happening to everyone.
Yeah.
Me, I extend people so much grace.
Grace.
If
Exactly.
you don't talk to me for a whole year, me, I won't judge you. As long as we don't have a fallout, maybe you did something that made me cut you off or stop talking to you. If you call me even after 2 years, I'm like, hey, what's up? Nataka tuende wapi? I'll pull up and show up. Because I think, even for me, I also struggle to keep tabs with. But I do have relatives who are so good at it. There is a cousin of mine who always checks up on everyone. And surprisingly, he's a guy.
Yeah.
He checks up on everyone. Cliff will call you. I don't think a week passes without us talking. And he's always the one calling. And I'm always like, I feel so bad sometimes. I'm like, hey, Cliff, you're always checking up on me. He's like, even when you're talking to him, he's like, oh, I spoke to so-and-so. She's okay. Do you know Nani gave birth? How are
People
you
are
keeping
even
up with
giving birth.
everybody?
Everyone, yeah.
And still living your life, going to school,
Yeah.
getting money.
Adulting, paying rent.
Gifted in that way.
It's a
And
gift.
They come and like meet us where we are.
Yeah, where
at.
we are.
Yeah.
But let me ask you again, interesting, sorry to cut you off. Do you feel, even though you extend people grace, that there are people you are entitled to their, say, being there for you? So that, say, for example, I'm saying, maybe my example is, like when my dad died, the people I felt should have
Should
been
have been
there.
there.
and they
Because the people would cross oceans for generally. And they were not there. So then I felt then I had to cut them off.
Yeah.
Because,
Now
there was
you know your true
explanation.
friend.
Yes, there was no explanation to them not being there.
Yeah.
You see, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if I was to extend them grace, it would make me a good person. But I didn't, because I felt I was entitled to their...
I know that
Do you
feeling.
have that feeling? Did you,
You know,
did you guys
before-
have that feeling?
I feel
Before
like
my dad died, sorry to cut you. Before
okay.
my dad died, I read a story when Biko wrote about losing his mother. And there's this part he talked about how there was a certain friend who was not there for him. And he felt so hurt. And I remember saying, exactly, you are supposed to be there. And then now when my dad
happened to
died,
you?
there's someone who did that to me. And I held on to that grudge for so long. Because this person, not even a call, not even a text, nothing. And I could see him because I had posted, like the way WhatsApp status, you put maybe like the tribute, whatever, the pay bill for kuchangisha, zilch. And I could see him.
See,
He views, but he's not doing anything. And I was so hurt. And I noticed I was the one who was hurting because this person, after all that, he called me. He's like, hey, Aggie, can you lend me money? Them, they're not feeling bad.
In jest, is he a Luo man?
Yeah. Definitely.
so let's don't be low man in it.
yeah, but grief
Yeah,
does
but
change
I'm
your
saying,
relationships.
yeah, me, I extend people grace. If someone feels entitled to me and I wasn't there and they let me know, I think
You'd understand.
I would
different,
understand.
yeah.
I really extend grace to people.
I also share those sentiments because I also feel like it's okay to have that entitlement. And it's not an entitlement because you did something for them. Let me clarify that because most of the time people think, oh, I'm entitled to
Because I showed
Olive
up
being
for
there
her.
for me because I was there for Olive. No, not that entitlement. It's the entitlement of, in this world, we foster different relationships, yeah? And look at that on-air thing, now think of it as a circle. There's people who are the dot in the middle, and then there's the people who are on the first line, second line, third line. And it's human nature to build those kinds of relationships. Some people are close to you. Some people are acquaintances you just know from work and all that kind of stuff. It's difficult for me to have an entitlement of a person I know in the line of work. They could end up being my dot in time of need, but that doesn't mean when I was going through all that, I was looking at them as that. It would mean the people who are like your dot. These are the people who, like, if you died today, ask yourself interesting questions like, I live alone. If I died today in my house, how long will it take before I'm found? My dots will know. My dots will know it's been 12 years and I've not seen Marylize on social media. I've not talked to Marylize. Last time I talked to Marylize was not okay. They would know that because those are my dots. Those are people who are close to me. So that entitlement comes with, again, human beings. We are not an island. We are human beings. We are an extension of each other. So to assume as a human being you're working, knowing in case tragedy hits your home, you don't have a right to be entitled to support. It's crazy to think about, because literally even in your best days, you still need people around you. You're entitled to people. It's the same people you call. Sasa bro, si twende 2 for the road before we get. If I can call you randomly for 2 for the road and you can drop everything and come, I can be entitled to when I need you in my point of need, my lowest moment, I'm entitled to that. So again, it has nothing to do with give and take, even though I do believe life has a lot to do with give and take, but it's more so, show me your people and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah. In my defense.
Can I know my
Before I read Arnold's book, I can go read that book. Before I read Arnold's book, I don't know if, maybe I have the privilege because I haven't had that sort of loss. But what tragedy to other people do for me is, I don't know, I would freeze. Like you say, the way your guest started crying and you don't know what to do. So that was me before that book, and I think I go into overthinking, where I'm thinking, if me, it had happened to me, maybe I wouldn't want someone to be here with me. Or maybe people would be overwhelming. Right. So I get into that space where I'm just now frozen, where I'm like, am I one of the people bothering you if I'm texting? I think you're someone close who I want to show up for, but do you think I'm someone close? You're my best friend, but am I your best friend?
I get that, yes.
So you're in a moment of just freezing. But after reading the book, I realized just show up. So it was
it's more for you. It's more a you thing than we spend a lot of time assuming what would she want. But that is not the thing. The thing isn't what she would want. The thing is, do you have a relationship? Even if she wanted something, she would ask you. And then the other thing is you and your responsibility. What do you feel like you should do? Aside you questioning, what would I have done in this situation? Or what can I do? I've frozen. The question is, do I feel like I need to do something? Yes, then do it. And the entitlement comes from there. It's not a thing you're expecting, but it's a thing that should naturally. It's the same way people say, our parents like using this line, I'm your mother. Do this, I'm your mother, I'm your father, right? Exactly. It's that somehow the connections you create with people earns you that entitlement. It's a thing that happens.
Something you said earlier, that you felt like a fraud. Was it you?
Yes. I felt like a fraudster. For feeling those feelings that I was feeling.
So
and
for me, it was the same thing. When I lost my friend, I was like, if someone goes through her call log, you can't see as many calls. If someone so I wrote about it I just wrote like a nice piece on TikTok and posted, and I didn't think much about it. But then when it started getting traction, I was like, wait, the family will think I'm using
just by imposing.
I was now just completely worried, because I was just like,
so you've gone overdrive.
From outside, no one can see any sort of relationship with this person, but literally I'm having sleepless nights. I'm waking up in the middle of the night, I'm sweating. This person's loss is affecting me in ways I do not know what this is, but I cannot justify why I'm feeling like this to people outside of me and that person. So I felt like a constant fraud.
So maybe you've had a real experience with grief. You just, you just thought it's over there.
Yeah.
Maybe not. The last thing was her replying to one of my stories, one of my memes, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But when now I'm seeing it on TikTok and it's gaining traction, I'm just like, I don't want people to feel like even the family has not even put out anything yet. You've grieved more than the family. I was just in a
rough umesoga baby.
Yeah. I think one thing we don't talk about, and that's a good, how lonely grief is.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether, like my family, my siblings, we lost the same father, but we had
Different grieving process. Yeah.
and
read the book.
yes, it's like very, grief is personal and lonely, and you can't share it, and you can't empathize with it, and you can't, it's a very
Even with
intimate
blood.
Yeah, one of my friends lost her child, like and I grieved, and sometimes I was grieving, but I'm like, am I denying her the chance
right
to
to
grieve
grieve.
her own child? But I felt like I had a personal, it's like a very but grief is personal, it's lonely, it's between you and them, and nobody can take away your right to grieve, and nobody can take away your depth or how deeply or how painful it feels, because that's between you and them. Also, you can't compare grief.
You can't
be like you.
It's not
Your grief is stronger than mine and yours. You can't compare grief.
But this
cheza
speaking
chini
of that-
kidogo punguza.
Speaking of that,
Uncle yako tulia.
hata watoto wake hawalii. But then speaking of now how different people handle it, my siblings, I think, and we were pretty much similar. We were crying and all that. I remember my small sister was really angry because dad died when she was in school. So the last time she saw her father was in the beginning of the term. So then we are coming to tell her, this guy can't come to pick you because dad used to pick her from school. So she's like, where is dad? He told me he'd be here the last time we spoke. Yeah. She never saw dad unwell. So she doesn't understand how he went from happy and jovial to dead, right? My other sister who follows me, she was also in school, but she'd come to the hospital sometimes and saw dad. Me and my mom, we had seen him from the day he was admitted, making people laugh, to the day he went to ICU. We saw everything. Now my father's siblings, it was a very interesting dynamic to watch because they were really grieving. And my dad comes from, the family is polygamous, 3 wives, but they're very close. Very, very close. You'd even be told that these kids are from 3 different wives and you wouldn't believe it. So I remember looking at my dad's siblings mourn him because he was like my dad was that person who gets along with everyone. So now the other day, when dad died, I used to have a blog, a creative blog where I'd post my shenanigans.
I used to write.
Yes. So, and I had a section
very
called...
fun writer.
Thank you. I had a section called Dear Sweet Old Man, where I'd write letters to my dad. So every time I'd write, I'd share it on my WhatsApp group with my cousins, and then my cousins would share it with their parents. Now, I didn't know that the parents were reading it. So me, I'd just write, and every time I meet my dad's eldest bro, he calls me Agita Press, because it was agita@wordpress.com. So he's like, Agita Press, kwa nini hujaandika? And now the other day, he asked me, I've not seen your blog posts in a while. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I stopped paying for the domain. It's a creative, we start things and we stop. We are just like that. We're just...
It had served its purpose. No longer...
But for him, he was reading letters written to his siblings. So I remember telling him, then he's like, why? I'm like, now I have to get a reason. I tell him, I've not paid for the hosting fees. Then he's like, how much is it? I'm like, what? No,
that's not the
even
point.
If you pay for it, I don't want to. So every time I meet him, he's always asking. And maybe I might bring back that segment just for him.
Yeah.
Because I realized that for him, that was how
that meant something.
He was grieving his bro. So just watching different people also, I took a lot of time to observe people, even in my own grieving, because I was like, maybe I need to also understand what other people feel.
Yeah.
And his friends came and you'd hear them talk. My mom is very gangster. She never cries. She never has emotions. But I saw her cry for the first time when my dad died.
But those are also the most emotional people. They've just figured
Emotional
out.
gangsters.
They've just figured out. Life
to
is
maneuver.
kinda easier to maneuver. Hizi feelings ukizipumzisha kidogo, kwa sababu ukianza kulia uta-spend more time crying, because a lot of things are making you want to cry anyway. But when they get the outlet, hey.
Grief is very lonely and very personal.
Very lonely, it's very
That's
personal.
sort of the advice I generally always give people. Allow yourself to go through the emotions in your
All
own
of
way.
them, yes, and
In your
don't put
own way.
time limits to
Yes.
it or anything like that. Because I remember even for me growing up, I was so detached from emotions, right? And it's because with traumatic experiences, you'd rather not
You disengage
Think.
your yes.
you'd rather
friend.
disconnect completely. Mtu hata akiongea hizo vitu, you catch yourself either leaving the conversation or you're the one now to bring a meme. You're talking about something serious, but you can't resist just bringing something to laugh about and just forget that serious topic. Then therapy hit when I was in the pits of everything, literally. And that's where you learn, feel. That's literally the only thing every human being is born knowing, to feel. That's why kids cry. Immediately they're born, the first thing they do is what? Cry. It's because they're feeling. All of a sudden they're in this cold, cruel world. And they're like,
to the world. I wasn't ready for this traumatic experience.
from there how you develop
Traumatic experience.
yes, and from there how you develop as a human being is based off of feeling. You're a big mass of emotions, good emotions, bad emotions, ugly emotions anyway. So allow yourself to feel, give yourself that permission all the time, so that if you feel sad, you just say you feel sad. If you're not okay, tumezoea habari yako mzuri, good morning to also who came up with the greeting good morning. The pressure to just say it's a good morning. Yes. And then when you answer what's so good about the morning, people are saying that's so rude. I was just asking. No, it's not. Like literally I'm having the worst morning ever and you're here pressuring me to have a good morning. Like literally we move along feeling and it's very easy to postpone. It's very easy to postpone our feelings because, like she was saying, everyone is going through stuff. So it's very easy to say, "Oh, my stuff is not as complicated
As the other
as what
person's."
she's going on, so let me just like give her room to do that." No, her stuff can happen. Your stuff can happen. We can even just meet at
They don't discount the other. Yes.
and scream, we're all going through different things. Mwingine ni job amefutwa, mwingine ni kulose, mtu amelose, mwingine ni girlfriend ama boyfriend amemwacha, mwingine mwingine hata tu hakukula jana usiku. It's all things, but we just meet there and then we all just scream and yell, and then when we're done we go back home.
But I think you also need to extend yourself the grace of understanding that somebody else's pain does not discount
They're
your
not
pain.
the same,
Because
yeah.
remember, when you're at a point of grief, somebody can even tell you, me babangu alikufa nikizaliwa.
And then now you start feeling,
You at least you grew up when you're 25.
Nataka aje.
it's such
So
an
you're not very
African
careful.
thing.
If you're not careful, then
Wewe
you begin to
kwanza hiyo,
discount
wewe si wa kwanza.
Wewe si wa kwanza.
But in therapy, and that's why I'm sure if you say your therapist is a good therapist, it's because I've been to therapy and there's therapists who tell you, I also lost my dad.
This is a
Now that's
I'm paying you to listen to $50. I'm not paying you $50.
I came to pay you for therapy. How your relationship with you go pay someone who's a therapist. It's not me. I was paying here for you to sit and listen. And if anything, guide me how to maneuver these things, emotions, feelings, complicated stuff that I'm going through. If you start comparing my situation with yours, it's easy for you not to listen to what I'm saying.
True.
Because we all probably went through the similar experience. But the reason I'm here is because look at you surviving after the experience and I can't even comprehend life at the moment. So calm down. It's okay.
But that should be yes.
I was going to say, I think we should talk about the place of therapy in grief and how, like, have you guys been to therapy? How did that affect your grief, your healing process and journey?
Me, there was no therapy during my time when my dad died. We just had to figure it out.
Cry.
Yeah. But myself, I talked about it a lot. I wrote about it on my blog. I think I just did it on my own.
Yeah.
But writing is what got me through it.
Yeah.
For me, therapy. I mean, I still do therapy until now. So there is that part. But I don't think the way I see my life, I've been in therapy for the last 5, going to 6 years now. But the way I see my life, if it weren't for therapy, I wouldn't be here. I know that for sure. And then the way also I see my life, it's now going to 3 years of me actively living. When I started therapy, I wasn't actively living. I was actively looking for options to get out of here. And somehow, because everyone says therapy is nice and all that kind of stuff, and I can't say I hated therapy because I'm lucky I have a good therapist who, again, I've been through my fair share of therapists who tell you, I can pray for you, or you should go to church or whatever.
Pray.
Yes.
Is this in the church? Is this a
Therapist in the church.
like
No, just a therapist who believes in God.
independent?
Yes.
That's illegal, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
No, but how would you
But
know?
we
You're
don't
very
know all the therapists
vulnerable.
are
How
mama
would
wazee
you
in
know?
their 40s.
Yes, she's a mama
And they're
actually. Also, how would you know?
All these two
You-
pastors
it's
who've
your
converted
first time.
themselves into therapy.
I'm also actually glad I was able to comprehend, and I'm also glad it's not like I've become non-religious or non-believing today or yesterday. It's something that has been going on for a while. So I remember the initial emotion was the uncomfortability of, even in this moment where I'm so dejected and I'm coming to you as a person who has even attempted suicide a couple of times. So trust me, I have nothing to lose. You probably have money that you'll be given to lose if you don't see me as a client, but I have nothing to lose. And so in that moment I was like we were talking earlier and saying you were angry at God because your father died, same as you. In that moment, even if I believed in God, it was like one of the worst moments to bring that topic. But also for me, who is an unbeliever, I was like, first of all, I don't believe in God. And then now I'm going through all this, and all I want is some sort of a tunnel to be placed at my eye level, and for me to see the other end, and for me to see light. I don't even have to be in the tunnel because I feel like I'm into deep the trenches of the hata kama ndoto shikilia kiberiti hivi nione light. It doesn't matter which light I'll see. It doesn't have to be daylight. It just has to be some sort of light, right? That's all I needed. And so it felt uncomfortable because it felt like I had to constantly keep on reminding her, but I don't believe in God like that. So you want to pray for me. I don't believe in prayer as a solution. Yeah. I've seen this.
Religion should be regulated.
I've seen this TikTok of a child. They're praying, but the child eats while they're praying. And I'm wafunge macho anafanya kitu hivi ukweli, but
Guys, God knows
it's so hilarious. It's so hilarious. So I feel like if I continued with her, I'll be like that child. You are praying, and somehow I'm supposed to be still in this moment because you're doing your thing. But like I can't, because I don't even relate with how important this is, because it's only important to you. It's not even to me. This child doesn't care. This child just wants to eat. Somehow you're interrupting me to pray. What's that? Pretend you're closing the eyes and then continue eating as people are. Yeah. And so like for me, it felt that way. So having been able to just tell her, I don't think this will continue. And considering when I met her through a mentor of mine. So I got back to my mentor and I told her what had happened. And then I looked for another therapist and the therapist has been amazing. Like it's a journey, and it's not about your therapist agreeing with you. It's about your therapist making you see the point. Yeah, see the point of everything, not their point, but the point of everything. These things happen. It's not because there's a reason, but now they happened and they harmed you in this way and this way and this way and this way. And literally from where we are standing now, you have no control over things from the past. But from where we are standing now, you are the one who has power. And probably that is one of the places I learned why power is a thing that should either be given or there should be room to take and all that kind of stuff. And she told me, you have now the power to decide, even if you wanted to die today. She also taught me, we shouldn't be obsessed with saving people when they're suicidal and all that kind of stuff. Because she told me, you have that power. If you live here today and you go and attempt suicide, and this time you succeed, I will not sit here and say I wish I saved you, because there's no way I can save you. You can't save a person who has decided. The person has to decide for themselves if they want to save themselves, which I feel like is ridiculous, because trauma, you don't cause it on yourself, but now you have to figure out whether you want to save yourself. But for her giving me that grace for me to be able to see that for myself, and the grace to also go through the process, because it's not a thing that happened the first week I went for therapy. Me, I used to go for therapy 3 times a week. 3 times. Kwa nalala naamka na kunywa therapy na dawa zenye unapewa hakuna. Life yangu ilikuwa tu, it was like this ball of numbness. Everything that I talk about is therapy. Yes. And now I've gotten to a stage where therapy is like the way you take your car for maintenance, just so it doesn't break down on you and all that kind of stuff. Therapy is a thing. I can tell when I'm in the pits and I need therapy. I can tell when something is about to happen. I can see myself, and I can tell when I'm good and I'm just going to therapy to just talk about the progress I'm making and all that. Yeah.
I think for me, it's sort of unsolicited advice I always give people who are going to therapy. For any,
go to therapy.
Go to therapy. Sometimes because I always, just remember my situation, maybe 6-7 months, when I was really thinking, and I could not see, of course. Yeah. But then therapy was the last thing on my mind.
Yeah, true.
So just randomly out of nowhere, a lady from Agape, counseling. Somebody called Agape Vocational and Counseling. He has called me and told me that a friend had paid for 3 sessions. Come. And I was not keen on it. I had never gone to therapy, and I had no interest at all. So, she kept badgering, and then I think maybe 4 weeks later, niambia, ilishalipiwa. At least kuja dola tuonane. So I went.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. Yeah. It changed, because I remember at that time, I don't know if this will be a very hot take for podcast, but there was a constant thing in my mind that was causing the thinking, because it was not as much the grief, but as much a particular incident. Because when, as my father then was dying, and then he became vegetative, and so there are things he could not do, and there are very many moments my mother could not be there sometimes because of work. And so, seeing your parent naked, for example. And so later on, 6-7 months later, then it becomes a very constant image in my head. Yeah. You see? Yeah. And so when I went, and I had a very gracious therapist called Emma. And when I'd talked, when I'd ranted, when I'd cried, and then she asked me, then who would you have rather had been there for him at that moment? And it just flipped my mind. Yeah. You see, it became now a moment of honor that I was there for him.
You actually, it's actually a very important thing.
That it was,
yeah.
But before that,
and
then
you
I could
struggle
not
to see that. Yes,
I could not see. So I advise very many people.
Yeah.
If I unsolicited, I tell you, go see somebody. Yeah. If you need me to pay for you, go see somebody.
Yeah.
If you need a hotline, if you need a free, go.
Just go.
Very important. It changes your view about very many things, because they don't advise you, they listen to you, and they just sort of, nudge you to talk, to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you'll have those weird quiet moments in therapy too, where your therapist is looking at you, you're looking at them, we are looking at each other, but pia anakuangalia tu. Yeah. Mimi nishaiambiwa, you just come, even if we'll spend the whole hour and a half staring at each other. Hiyo itakuwa therapy ya hiyo siku. In fact, we stared at each other while you're thinking of all these things you want to talk about that you can't. So let's do that. Yeah.
I think one image I saw, I also went to therapy right after the grief. Grief is complex. And grief is not, when you start grieving, it's not like
it's
your experiences. It's like sasa tunaanza 0. Now we are starting at what's the first stage of grief? Denial. And now you're starting at denial, and then
you can be at 10 and come back to 0.
Exactly. In fact, denial can come 10 years after.
Exactly. And it's also not like the experiences you've had, like with your dad. It's not like now they're gone, and actually now you're starting at the death. It's a very complex, very, very convoluted process. There's an image I saw that I explained grief to me really, really well. So imagine if you see when you have all your earphones and your wires and you put them in a bag, and then when you try to remove them, they're just they're just jangled up. That's you and all the emotions and the feelings you have. And what the therapist does, they don't
help you
ban them, but they just help you untangle them simply until now you understand this one is a headphone, this one is a cable, and this one is a charger. It just helps with that. And with when I was going through those moments when I was rolling on the floor when my friends are leaving my house, I found that so difficult to understand. And when I was trying to like drive myself around Nairobi and I can't figure out where to turn, and many moments when I was in policemen weeping, so policemen stopped me, they're like, madam,
actually, I've had so many people saying, police, stop them.
No, but ladies do that a lot. Ladies do that a lot.
Like, Sasa, where are you going? After you're climbing, it's a pavement. Where are you going? And I just weep. And when you're grieving, sometimes you cannot function. And it's because of those complex emotions and like those things that are going through. And I think just like for the therapist to go moments of like, what's happening? Or it's the separation, why? And that separation anxiety was from my childhood. It's like a deep when my dad left me when I was really young, and now he's dead, and now I'm connecting all those. Like, it's just a very messy process. Being a human being is messy in general.
Yeah.
And when you add grief to that, it's like
more messy.
It's like you're pouring like cement inside wool. It's like very complex. And so it was really, really helpful in untangling all those things and making me process grief in a more aware way, in just awareness of what's going on and understanding your triggers, like you said, understanding that like if I do that, it will trigger me, or when this is happening, this is how it's triggering me, and it makes you more functional as a person who's going through grief, and makes the healing process easier.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, guys. I'm basically winding up, but I just want to read some of the responses that I got. The camera is dying, but if it dies, we'll remain with audio only, and then I'll put a poster for you guys, okay? What was YouTube? So I'm just going to read through this because I feel like we've mostly covered most of them, but
Yes, we
if
have.
something has come up that we've not talked about, you can just tell me. So someone here says, sent me to depression, had to be in therapy, was to also be put on medication if no improvement. So there's, I guess, levels to it.
Yeah.
I lost my brother last December. I never knew such pain exists. The grief doesn't leave.
Yeah. And it's also really fresh still.
Yeah, that's very fresh.
Yeah.
Yes, grief made me comfortable with death. It changes your mind.
I think I
agree.
relate with that completely.
Do you feel you guys like can handle another death better than now someone like me, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I can't.
I think it's scared of losing people I love.
Yes.
No, I think like the relationship with death right now is like death used to be this like mystical creature. It used to be like a unicorn.
Yeah.
And you don't
It
understand
happens
it.
to other people,
With
not
other
you.
people. It's also like in the media. It's been put on green, like a very like foreign concept.
Yeah.
I think it just made me understand death and like accept death is what I think where I'm at. But obviously, if like my other parent passes away now, I'm still rolling on the floor. Like it's still, but now I know to go to therapy sooner, and I know like it just helps with learning how to deal with grief.
I feel like the way people normally say grief is love without a destination. So when you think about it, grief is really love. And I think when you ask someone, do you think you can be able to deal with that? The real question is, do you think you're capable of loving? So if you're capable of loving, you're going to be capable of dealing with grief. And like she said, and the more you go through it, it doesn't make you better at dealing with it. It just makes you better at understanding it. And understanding and knowing it's okay to love. It's okay to love. I love deeply because also we've lived in a world which is crazy enough to shame people for loving deeply, for being feelers, for people who can say, I loved this person. No matter how closely related you are or how far apart you are with regards to how related you are, still, it's a thing about love. And I think when you learn to understand grief as a love without destination, then you understand you will grieve a lot because you love people, don't you? Yeah, so you will grieve. It doesn't make you better at it, but it makes you understand it better. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think the insight I got from that was from this, what is it called? Tech support. They have a mortician who came on and was asked, do you lost someone? Apparently, he deals with dead bodies daily. But when his was dead, that was a whole new
That
thing.
was yeah, I know of an uncle too is a doctor, and when the mother died, you wouldn't think he's a surgeon who loses people
Daily.
when they
Yours
like
is different.
yeah, so it's different. It doesn't, nobody, no matter how many people you lose in life, no matter how big of tragedies you go through, I know of people who like they've lost their whole family in an accident or things like that. It's still, when another death happens, doesn't mean they'll be better at dealing with it.
It's still just as painful.
Yeah, it's
Just
because the more you learn to love, and I feel like the more we grow, the more we learn to love. I feel like both ourselves and people around us, and the more you learn how to love yourself and people around you, the more grief hits harder. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and maybe this is a very amateur question, but maybe other people have wondered. Because when I see my parents handle the news of death, they've gotten to a point where it's almost casual. And my dad tells me, at this age, I'm literally lucky to be the only one. Like my friends are falling off every day. So I'm just wondering, you know, sometimes he answers a call, the way you'd answer a call from Agie and be like, oh, naleta chipo. That's how he did. Oh, Nani has died. Okay, and then you hear another call. Okay, we are going to the hospital. Yeah, it's just very casual. I'm just like, I don't know if I have the capacity to ever.
I think it's a sort of numbness that we have
over the years.
Yes.
For me, I feel like it has. So when I hear death that is maybe being murdered or going through something traumatic and it kills you, or things like suicide, for example, not necessarily from a point of we should have saved the person, but like just like the sudden discontinuation of life, right? That hits me harder. But when but like if it's just like a person who has lived, I feel like my place that I go to when it's not even about age really, it's about how I knew people, because I feel like the sudden nature of death is when under different circumstances you wouldn't be dead, someone killed you, right? I feel like that takes much bigger toll on me than when it's
old age
you were sick and you died, because I feel like if you were sick and I knew, if I didn't know, I'll probably be shocked by the fact that you were sick, because I didn't know you were sick. But if you were sick and I knew, I'd be like, I mean,
that one
it's one way.
Because what else am I supposed to do? Like, especially as a person who is a sickling myself at the moment, like if I died, like it's something I've talked to myself about a lot, because sometimes I remember I'm in the house and I'm in so much pain and I know people know I'm sick, right? But if I die, I wouldn't expect, and I mean, I don't have a right to have that expectation of people, but I wouldn't expect people to be like, we didn't know Marylize was sick, because they know Marylize was sick, right? Whereas if I died, probably even suicide, I wouldn't expect people to be shocked, because they'll be like, maybe Marylize was tired of the things they were dealing with and they just decided we are done and all that kind of stuff. But now when it comes to other people, and that's why I feel like even the whole thing about femicide, people are posting things on social media. If you post things in this group, I'm gonna leave your group, because I don't know how I will handle. I don't feel like I have enough capacity to handle death in that way. Like, I'm here with you right now, and then I killed you, and then now people are like, you're dead because I killed you. You know,
death needs to happen in situations where, when you're directing
rational.
your anger into something beyond
your control.
Because I feel like human beings are also like that. We always want to figure out what happened, who is to blame, and when you're in pain, even more so. But because of how I've accepted and understood the totality of death, I'm not mad at it. I'm like, if we die, we die. The way Kenyans like saying.
Do you think your dad? I always ask myself this because I haven't gone through like close grief a lot, but is it like breakups? You know, like the first one. You know that first love.
One that takes you to therapy.
12 years derailed.
The one that you say you are sick and you're not sick.
After like 4 breakups, you're like, the conversation, you're still not here. Cool.
We move.
Do you think it's like
Inspirational what? Coach and speakers, life coach. Marao.
If he looks at you badly, leave him. If he's not, leave him. Because now you're numb to
No, I not in looking at you badly, but I do believe don't stay too long in bad situations. Life is too short to stay too long in bad situations. Yeah.
Let me go through this. You had a question for me? No. It doesn't end. You just learn to live with it. That is something we've learned.
yeah.
I've gone through loss. You can never say for sure how you will react until it happens. It gets physical, like physical pain.
Yes.
It's love without nowhere to take it. My dad passed in 2020, and where we grow around it.
Yeah.
It's so hard to grieve. Someone just said it's so hard to grieve.
It really is.
Another person told me, I have lost 5 pregnancies, 1 a week ago. You just never get over it. Emotions will hit you randomly, and you question yourself every day why a simple thing like staying pregnant is so hard. I thank God for a supportive hubby and family. So finally, let's talk about the support system you have around you when going through this. I think.
So when you guys are talking about friendships and the expectation for friendships, it made me wonder why, and this might be maybe controversial, but it made me wonder why we have created a system or a society where we have no expectations of our friends. I think like being a friend is a responsibility.
Yes.
And it's a choice. You can choose to be someone's friend, and you can choose to not be their friend.
Yeah.
But if you choose to be their friend, it comes with a set of responsibilities.
Yep.
And there's very few moments in life where you need your friends. You know, there's moments in life where you want them and you hang out with them and you laugh with them. Even in like a wedding, you don't need your friends. It's like you want them to be around. But there's moments in your life where you will need your friends. And those moments are the valleys, is where you need people. And with the question of support, going through that season solidified my friendships in ways that nothing else has ever done. Like they came, they stayed for weeks with me and my family. They did the errands for booking venues, finding shoes, everything. And they sort of like ran my father's funeral in a way that they would like run my wedding in a way, like, you know, book venues. And just them being there and being present and running around, interacting with my family as if it's their family was life-changing. Our relationships are now very different from where they were before the grief. And I'm so grateful. So my support system was like, one, my very, very close friends. I have very few friends, but they're solid friends. My partner, he has never even been to that side of Kenya before. And he was fully present throughout, even when even after we came back to Nairobi and I had to like do months of grieving by myself. And my family, we had weekly Zoom meetings to just talk about how you're feeling, how is it affecting you, how are you dealing with it, what support do you need. And it also brought us closer in a way that nothing else ever has. And now we have like yearly meetings to commemorate my dad, and we do the things that he would do during those seasons. And so I would say like those were the 3 main support systems. I expected there was circles I expected to be in this support system, but they just weren't.
Through,
and you just realize that actually, after that, those relationships have since been gone to that circle.
Yeah, the outer one, yes.
And my life is just, it's still rich.
Okay,
and
exactly.
It does, you sort of like sieve through your friendships in a way that like you understand very, very, very clearly who the core circle is, and you understand very clearly who is not core. And that actually enriches your life.
And is this unspoken, or like the people in this circle just know if something happens to one of us, then we move like this?
Yeah, I think one thing conversations I have with my friends is this conversation of like, don't say I don't have any expectations of you. Have expectations of me, and tell me what those expectations are. Because I have a responsibility to be your friend, and if you're just going to go through life with no expectations of me, then what are we? You know, I might as well be your colleague, where you're like, we interact every day.
We meet our working hours, and everyone goes the separate ways after. Yeah.
So every time, like me and my friends, we talk about like, I have no expectations of you. No, we always remind each other, no, have expectations of me. Yeah. And when I fail those expectations, let's talk about it. Me and my friend were going through grief at the same time, one of my best friends. And it was a rough conversation because it was like comparing griefs in a way. You know, like you have it easier than me, and like you, like, why are you not? And those real conversations, they really do shape your friendship. And we just wrote down, how do you want me to be there? I want you to come to buy me flowers every week. I can do that. I'll not show up. Maybe I'll send a rider. Check.
But
I would like for you to call me.
The act of you remembering to get those flowers means
so just like listing those things down. We had a long walk in Karura Forest, and we just spoke about what is your expectation of me as your friend in this season.
Very nice.
Awesome. And then we clear it up.
It is.
I wouldn't say I had a support system when I was grieving. In fact, until today, I feel like it's always a struggle because, and probably this is why I forced myself into a situation of comparing grieving when someone dies versus grieving when people are still alive, because I feel like that is always compared. And there's, again, the general assumption, the whole world thinks they know what you can do. People think you've not tried. The things they're saying, they think you've not tried. The things they're saying, they think you don't feel guilty about. Everything is about assumption. But I think for me, the hardest thing was in the moment where I started going through that grief of like, even like being thrown out of home and going through the grieving simple things like, now I don't have a home. Felt so lonely because I remember what came with all that was a lot of shame. I felt like I was a shame to my family. And then everyone I talked to, now I don't think I have up to 1,000 contacts on my phone. And I'm saying this knowing I'm a person who works within a community, and it's easy for me to have those numbers. But then I had well over 1,500, and I would scroll through my phone and I would cry like a child because everyone I would text, I remember there are people I would text and ask, can I stay at your place today? I don't have a place to go. That's all that I could say. I feel like for me, and that's why I love what he said about, yes, there's expectation. For me, there's no friend of mine who would text me and tell me I have no place to go and I don't tell them come over. And it's not something I started doing after I went through that experience. It's something I've always known, right? You don't have to explain anything to me. The fact that you came to me and told me I have nowhere to go is enough. That is enough explanation. Other things we will figure out later. I have friends that I've even hosted in my place and I've never known what was going on. Because for me, that's not the important thing, the most important thing. And I'd have people I would text and I would not get any response. Or if you get a response, I've gotten even responses from people who would be like, you can come over, we talk about it, and then we talk. And then when it nears the evening, they'll be like, now I have to leave, I'm going to my sister's place so we can live together. This is the same person. When they reached out, when they told you to go to their place, it's because you had told them you don't have a place to go. I think the moments I was broken the most is having to leave a friend's place to come have no place to sleep in town. And I would look at them and I'd be like, what do people do in situations like this? Until today, I have places in the CBD. I'm not the most comfortable person when I'm in the CBD. Life has to go on, but there are places I will only literally go if I must. I don't have to, because I immediately I'm there. It's a place that feels more or less like it's like a home when you didn't have any and all that kind of stuff. And it was really excruciating. It was really painful. And then now when you speak about that grief and what that grief did to you, because all these things that happen when you're going through grief and all the things that happen during this grief, they totally inform the person that you are and continue to become. And so I've become this person. I'm a very forgiving person. I'm a very kind person. I'm a loving person. But through this grief, I had to learn what even like standing up for myself and choosing myself means. And that's why I have been keen from the beginning to say, yes, yeah, you are entitled to people and who they are in your life. You are totally entitled to that, because in moments where you are alone, you're entitled to have those people who you call and you tell them, I need this, and they show up for you. And as you live life, you also endeavor to be that person who people are entitled to in that way. That's why we foster relationships. That's why I can say all people in the world are my friends, because if I said that, it would be ridiculous. And I remember when I was going through that, there's a time I posted on social media and I said, life is so difficult and really you are alone. And there's a person I know all too well. That person is still a person that I see, I talk to sometimes. This person said, sadly, no one will ever come to save you. And when I read that, I think that's where hugely so. Initially, I would be the person who shows up for people. I didn't think hard about it. It was just, it's the human thing to do. But from there is when I made that choice. Showing up for people is a thing you must do as a human being. We can't be human beings who are comfortable saying, oh, Olive is going through her things. After all, we are all going through things. It's for exactly that reason why you should be there for people. We are all going through things. And the fact that you can actually figure out how to deal with them, but this person can't, and they need people, is the very reason why you should be there for them, regardless. So it's not a marathon of who is having it worse. It's really, despite and regardless, how good are we at just showing up for each other? Because grief taught me it's the loneliness of not understanding how to grieve, and then it's the loneliness of literally being alone. And I was alone for a long period. There was a time my therapist would order cabs for me home because I'd go to therapy. And if you've gone to therapy properly, there are days you get there. By the time your therapist is done, you just want to sleep there. You don't want to stand up. You have zero strength whatsoever to live. And she would order me a cab. And she would make sure I get home. She would even make sure, on those instances, she'd make sure she's the one who pays for my cab so that she can be able to be in touch with the driver and all that kind of stuff. And in those moments, it's because she would even ask me, is there anyone who can go with you? Because you can't leave this office alone. It's only moments when I was going and I was like, I hear what you're saying, but I still don't see the point of me being here to pursue all those things. Like, it doesn't make sense. So as a therapist, of course, it's her job to kind of sort of save people. So she's like, me, I'm not leaving this child to leave this office alone and go face their misery or something like that. And so in those moments is when I realized, if you can actually go through your phone and you know people, and it's people you can reach out. Yet the person who ended up helping me to a point where I had to leave the streets after 2 weeks of staying in the streets is a person who I met once. We had a training back in 2017, and this was late 2018, and she's Nigerian, and she's the one who reached out because she'd see some of my posts. My social media, for as long as I've ever had my first social media account, I've never had a private social media account. All of them have always been like open and they're accessible to everyone. So she would DM me, and she literally coerced me to tell her what was going on, because in that moment I was battling with emotions of shame, fear, being unwanted, being unworthy, being not good enough, doubting my identity. Even it's one of the things that I would say in that moment I was so sure about, but also doubting it. It was so many things all at once, right? And so I struggled to even say what was going on, because I feel like, and I have a couple of people who would tell me, I mean, I have a whole bunch of group that was formed of people who say, I must be a terrible person, that's why I was disowned by my parents. And those things they don't leave you. They make you question who you are all the time. And in those moments while you're grieving things like that, you need people to just remind you. I've learned how to remind myself I'm not all those things that I was meant to believe. But looking back, I know I deserved to have people there. I know I deserved to have people be lost with me, not in the sense of them getting lost as well, but in the sense of it's okay to go through those emotions. We are here for you. Anything that you need. The fact that I would go for days, I remember the longest I've gone without eating food is 14 days, and I went hungry. And I remember one of the people who came to see me in the house I'd gotten was a bed sitter. I didn't have for like a couple of weeks, I didn't have a mattress after I got the house, and I was on the floor. And then the time I got a mattress, it was that tiny mattress, because the person who was paying for my therapy then had sent me some extra money. I went and bought ile mattress, like ukiwa high school niko shusha wana wenzako wakiwa na hiyo mattress, the tiny one on the floor. And I couldn't, where the mattress was and where the door of the toilet was like, it was just a short distance, and I couldn't even get up to walk to go to the toilet. I had to crawl. It was, for lack of a better word, it was disgusting going through all those things. And now I can look back and laugh about them. But in those moments, I know when you're going through those moments, you need people, and you deserve to have people. And I'm so glad that, like, when you were explaining support system, I was like, geez, even Zoom calls, even like you can, okay, fine, you can be too busy to come see me, but like even just a Zoom call and just like check on me and all that kind of stuff. It was crazy. It was one time I almost burnt down in the house because I was not doing okay, and then power had gone out, and then I put on a candle, and then there's draining racks, plastic ones. I still have a picture of it somewhere where I had put the candle. It was just besides it, and then I just zoned out because I would go away very easily. I'm there but I am not, like literally it's all dark in front of me, and for a cool 20 minutes I'm seeing what is happening, but I can't do anything. I can't even move. The candle had fallen, and because the draining rack was plastic, it caught fire. It burnt halfway while I was watching but not seeing. I couldn't see anything, and it was so scary. And I would just sit there and I'd be like, even because I'm sure the neighbor alisikia your smoke, because my house that time I didn't even have gas. So if something is burning, I'm definitely not cooking. I am definitely not cooking. I am definitely not cooking. And it was crazy for me. And you would look at it that way, and you would know with support system, it's where you'd know in moments like that, you don't have to be there alone. You can go somewhere else where it's safer, or you can call people to come. But like even that, again, you go on your phone and you scroll and you see nobody. Like the people you see, you can call, they're the same ones who have told you, yeah, we don't want you here. Yeah.
I'm so sorry you had to go there.
It's okay.
Alone.
See now, I told you nowadays I know how to talk without crying, but the tears are right here.
So well as a collective.
But the tears are right here.
Nobody has cried. We are powering through.
But yeah, like you do need support system is everything, and it's not the way people think about it. It's not, I will pay for your trips, Eugenie. No, it's really the most simplest of things. The people who ask you, have you eaten? Because mimi hata 30 bob ya kubai indomie haikukuwa. So even if you wanted to eat what? Eat yourself, possibly. That was the closest thing. It was. Even now, I've had to learn so much when people try to invalidate the experience and tell me, but your parents are alive, just reach out to them. I tell them, You don't get to have the right to tell me what to do with this. The same way I normally tell people, no matter what I say about my family, I will never, and in my interaction even on social media, I will never give anyone permission to speak about them because no one knows the experience apart from myself. It's mine. It's mine. And I can, if it's holding them accountable, I don't think there's anything that I do that I hide at the moment. So I know they know. And the reason I know they know is because they have their moments too, where they just decide to bombard me with matusi and all that kind of stuff. It used to be 10 steps ahead, 100 steps backwards. But now it's become that place where even when I'll take some steps back, but I've learned how to take that power back and be like, you know what? I've survived, you guys. You are my R. Kellys. So deal with yourselves. Yeah.
What was it? Support system?
In my fog of grief, I had a very good band of friends and family. I can't thank them enough.
Yeah.
It's very important. There was not a single moment that I went through alone.
Yeah.
And so sort of for me, my friendships, we move. Somebody has a bad moment, we move.
Yeah, together.
That's so cool.
There's no question about it. Yes.
Right, guys.
I love it so much.
I also had the same really supportive friends, really supportive family. Even like the relatives from my mom's side, they were there for us. God bless their souls. My cousins, everybody was there. Even my colleagues in my job, they actually were there. Salome helped me get an extended leave. They attended the harambes. They came to the burial. They were very supportive. I can honestly not complain.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
we all deserve that.
Yeah.
We all now. I've built a family of people
Actually,
that
even in
understand that. Yeah.
In January, I lost my uncle.
Yeah.
And this uncle of mine paid my school fees when I was going to Form 1. Because that uncle was like, getting to Form 1, I'm a firstborn, it's my parents' first time, and, everything is happening. And I had to be transferred to another school.
Yeah.
Actually, just told my dad, you know what, that school fees, ya term ya kwanza, I'll sort it. And now, when he died, he was also unwell. I remember just telling my cousins, you guys, whatever you need, you just tell me. You were there the whole time. I honestly hope I was there for them. I did what I could because even I was talking to my cousin, and one of them handles pain with humor like me. So it felt, I now understand how it is to deal with someone who is always throwing memes at problems or jokes. And it was really annoying.
Literally 80% of Kenyans. Let's mimify this situation. Let's go. Let's get it.
Exactly. So yeah, I really thank God for the kind of family I have, both paternal and maternal. Actually, so,
that's beautiful.
I had a good support system.
That's beautiful.
Yes,
The support system never leave you guys.
Bunch of friends.
But you
Finally, we have convinced you.
start writing it down. That's
Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Kago, how long was that?
This is us, guys.
We've had a very nice conversation.
I feel like the conversation was necessary and important.
It was.
Yeah.
I was so scared of the topic, but it's been easy. No one has cried.
Yeah.
You've done so well.
We came close, but we are good.
Your people are looking down at you.
We have to note that the person who said she can't cry was
I almost like I was like, that's what I was telling you. Like, I don't prepare to cry. I'm not worried about crying. I've just made it a routine in my life. If it happens, it happens. Wherever it happens. I mean, tears were there. What am I supposed to do? Control them. And apparently make your face clearer.
Skincare routine.
And your habanero peppers.
Thank you so much for coming. I am
Thank you for having
grateful. This was a beautiful conversation, of course, with my beautiful guests. And this is the In All Honesty podcast. My fabulous name is OLAVEORAWO. Today we were discussing loss and grief. And until next week, bye.
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 Next on the In All Honesty podcast.
So last week we had a beautiful, beautiful discussion about loss and death. loss and grief. I'm sorry, loss and grief, and it was just a wholesome conversation. And if you haven't watched it, please go back and watch it. But as I was having conversations with different people while preparing for the episode of loss and grief, I realized one thing, that the loss of a mother in a family, especially in one's formative years, is very different from just general loss. So next week we'll be talking about losing your mother earlier on in life, or your maternal figure earlier on in life, because we've seen aspects of people losing their dads and life goes on. But the stories I've heard from people who've lost their mothers earlier on in life is that it's almost as if the entire family crumbles. So I wanted a little insight into that. And if you have experiences with that, how losing your mother in your formative years basically just change the trajectory of your life completely, that of your father, that of your siblings, please talk to me. You can always DM me at OLAVEORAWO, and you can always send your stories through my email at olaveorawo@gmail.com. The loss of a maternal figure or the loss of your mother earlier on in life.
Do you hear that? Would you lend me some coins, please? The In All Honesty podcast needs you to continue running. I will deeply appreciate support from you. You can send monetary contributions to my Mpesa +254 728 171 059 via PayPal at OLAVEORAWO. That is OLAVEORAWO. You can support the podcast indirectly by buying merchandise and services I offer listed on my WhatsApp catalog. My WhatsApp number is +254 728 171 059. Did you think I'd forget? Advertise with the In All Honesty podcast. Hit me up to talk about it. You can do that via WhatsApp +254 728 171 059 or via email olaveorawo@gmail.com, or you can also DM me on socials at olaveorawo. You know, the hand that gives will receive an episode every week. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm in what was once a dream. So if I do some quick math, the future equals a dream come true. Since 1992, In All Honesty, a podcast by OLAVEORAWO.